everyone, I'm Savannah Alvarado and I'm going to be discussing the eviction moratorium and the need to change the logistics of it, my actual plan and policy to do so, and to also accurately visualize and represent to you how to make the moratorium fair for both parties. The eviction moratorium is a state jurisdiction to ensure non-risk eviction for tenants throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout the pandemic specifically, this was a matter that was up for debate. To give an overall basis of what I'm going to be talking about and what my policy entails, it is so that homeowners get a bit of the month's rent, but not all of it in accordance with the moratorium, causing those renting to stay within the comfort of their homes while paying their dues. I'd like to first discuss how the eviction moratorium impacts both parties from the homeowners and tenants of low-income residents and why we need to make change. We need to make change and the logistics to make both sides equal. To state the main point, the need here is equality. The eviction moratorium affects both sides, whether you are a homeowner or a tenant. Since COVID-19 was extremely detrimental to the common U.S. citizen in relation to low income, many were on edge about how practical their living situation actually was, especially those with not as many means. As far as equality goes, homeowners were faced with unsteady eviction plans. This means that throughout the pandemic, homeowners throughout America were unsure whether or not they were going to get a full month's rent from the entirety of their complex. This could cause potential problems, especially if owning an apartment complex was their sole source of income throughout the pandemic and even prior. Unreliability plays a huge factor in this idea because of the lack of stability they were faced with. Tenants, on the other hand, were losing their income along with their jobs and even, in some cases, their homes. It is not morally correct for one to be on the streets because a compromise could not be made. My policy specifically ensures equality among both parties for this particular reason. I talked about how the eviction moratorium impacts both parties from homeowners and renters and why we need to change the logistics to make both sides equal. I will now be going over my plan to change the direction of the eviction moratorium. At this rate, the eviction moratorium has been undecided, but with my plan to execute a more equal circumstance, you will find that the policy is just. The entirety of the plan is to make an equal change. Government funding does play a role in this because of the pandemic. There would be an additional incentive for those with lower incomes. According to Orange County United Way COVID-19 update, they state that setting up a fund to help fill gaps that have been exposed or worsened through this period of uncertainty, you'll have received a separate note on that fund. United Way's strength is helping communities rebuild and strengthen during and after challenging situations like the COVID-19 pandemic. We will need your help. This is a direct quote ensuring community and guidance throughout the pandemic, which I know is incredibly beneficial. With my plan, both sides would get an incentive, but in different ways. For the homeowners, the incentive would be getting at least some of the tenant's rent, opposed to none of it. For the tenant, this means to pay a bit of the monthly rent instead of the full amount. This method promotes a stability when just a percentage is due rather than the whole thing, and also helps both parties in an equal manner. According to the YouTube video, Supreme Court blocks CDC moratorium on evictions amid COVID pandemic, it states that it would be one thing if Congress had specifically authorized the action that the CDC has taken, but that has not happened. The CDC has imposed a nationwide moratorium on evictions reliance on a decades-old statute that authorized it to implement measures like fumigation and pest extermination. These are matters that the Supreme Court are concerned about. It's based down to the language of the moratorium as well as its relevancy. But with the policy, these are matters that still do not have any relevance specifically to low-income families and those in turmoil from the pandemic. I've gone over how the eviction moratorium impacts both parties, homeowners and renters, and why we need to change the logistics to make both sides equal, as well as my plan to change the direction of the eviction moratorium as a whole. I now want you to picture how possible it is for this equality to be achieved. Picture this: landlords being in economic despair during the COVID-19 pandemic because of the lack of payment that renters are inhibiting. Now, picture the renter being at high risk for homelessness and eviction solely because they are unable to pay for it because of the pandemic job loss. Now picture a compromise where homeowners get a percentage of the rent rather than none of it at all, and renters being able to stay in their homes because they could actually afford it. According to Housing and Renter Information, the eviction protections from Governor Newsom's executive order are limited. A tenant may still receive an eviction notice from their landlord during this time. Tenants still need to comply with their lease agreements, and if they are able to pay their rent, they should continue to pay the rent. Tenants may receive an eviction notice and need to respond. Tenants should seek legal advice. Nobody asked for the COVID-19 pandemic to happen, and so it is unfair to not come up with a policy that exudes equal circumstances for both parties involved in this policy, ensuring eviction will not happen. The need, the plan, and visualization of the policy stated are all in hopes for an equal process. The process in which homeowners get a bit of the month's rent, but not all of it, in accordance with the moratorium, causing those renting to stay within the comfort of their homes while paying their dues. Thank you.